Hi all and welcome to Thete's Mailbox again. This is a weekly look at some of the responses I got on various aspects of social media, mostly from YouTube, and statements or questions that I want to answer in a bit more detail, or at least comment on in a bit more detail. So we've got three different sources of questions or comments this week. First of all, from Patron, I always do those first. So this was about the Archives of Warcraft series I've started doing again. The first one I did was basically on sort of dungeons from vanilla last year. This time it's on major lore characters that are important in Legion, but have a long backstory stretching right back to the Warcraft RTS games, sometimes back to Warcraft 1 itself. So the comment here says, because a lot of the lore here says, it makes me want to actually read the books, which I haven't. And of course, a lot of this stuff does come from books. The problem is, like some of you may know, when it's summer, I, amongst other things, like to have a bit of a reading project. It's a good time to actually get a load of reading done. In the end, I went for the old favourite Tolkien. Reread Silmarillion and Lord of the Rings. But one thing I was thinking about is getting a load of the Warcraft novels, particularly the ones I haven't read before. The problem with them, though, is you don't know which ones you can believe. Because, the novels, you might read the novels and then, oh, that's very interesting. And then find out that Blizzard have retconned the story, which they are wont to do. So I find it that's why I haven't, I don't really read them anymore. I find it a very dispiriting affair. Just because of that, really. It's a shame that, it may be someone somewhere on a website has a list of novels that haven't been discredited by Blizzard yet. Because then maybe you could just read those ones, I don't know. But until then, I just read the Warcraft Chronicles, because that's supposed to be up to date, even though there's a little bit of funniness in there as well. It's almost like they brought these books out and then they're retconning even that when they've only just come out. I don't know. Now, next source is Curious Cat. This is something that I only came across quite recently. I haven't made a big publicising of it, but I'm trying it out, see how it works. It's basically a place where you can create yourself a profile and then invite other people to ask you questions. You don't have to create a profile as such to ask a question. You can go on anonymously, as these two have. And there's several people who've asked those there, and they can just ask me questions and I can try and respond to them. I don't check this one every day, by the way, but I do check it a few times a week. So I'll try and put a link in the description below if I remember, but it's for mine, it's curiouscat.me/TheteGaming, I think. And so anyway, we'll go through a couple of them. So one of them was asking here, it says, so with the Legion seeming to be a pretty big success, do you think the next expansion will have a lot of the same elements? And if so, how do you think they work? I feel like world quests are here to stay, but do you think the artifact system, relics, Legion, legendaries, Nomi is sticking around? Do you also think that after some of the backlash about Orangey, they might build a better or different system? What I would say to this one is, obviously, any elements they see as being a success, they will want to keep. Obviously, artifacts themselves are going away because we're going to expend the power of our artifacts in an initial defeat of whatever the first. There's going to be an initial thing with the old gods and spoilers. No, we haven't been officially told, so it's not a spoiler. It's my speculation. Except I'm fairly sure this is true. And we exhaust the power of our artifacts in that first thing when the new expansion comes out. So they're going. We know they're going. We know artifacts are going. They've said as much anyway. And but the artifact system, I'm sure, is here to stay because it does what they want it to do. That is to compel us to do certain types of content. It is possible that they could come up with a better system for it. They're obviously going to have to come up with a slightly amended system for it because we're just going to have normal weapons again next expansion. So it has to be for something else. And, when they say about same elements, there will be some elements that will be the same, but there will also be some elements that will be different. Every expansion that's ever come out has had new systems as well. And I'm sure that there will be new systems in this too. But I do think artifact power in some guys will be there. The legendary system, yes, I think if I'm honest, I've never heard them say this, but if I'm honest, I would probably think as a developer they lump legendaries into the same boat as flying, and they wish they could just set it out to sea and set fire to it, because It causes them headaches, but unfortunately they're too linked into the game now. I mean, legendaries were always a part of the game, really, ever since the raids came out, ever since Molten Core at least came out. So they need to have legendaries in the game. They can't just not have them. And they may consider the current form to be the lesser of evils. In other words, the better system of all the other ones that have been tried. It keeps reminding me of Winston Churchill's famous quote about democracy, saying that democracy is the very worst form of government, apart from all the others that we've tried. But on the issue of legendaries, they did, and I've said this before, but they haven't said anything recently. At the start of the expansion, everyone was moaning about the inequity, the difference between getting Abyss Legendary and getting a rubbish one. Blizzard put this down to the fact that, as they called it, throughput legendaries were the problem. In other words, legendaries that increase your healing output or your DPS output, for example, they saw those legendaries as the problem. So that sort of suggested that for the next expansion, they would be getting rid of them, and that all of the legendaries would just be what we now call utility legendaries. Speedy boots and things like that. So you might expect that. However, the fact that they haven't been talking about legendary philosophy for a while, I haven't heard them say anything for it for months. Who knows? They may have changed their mind since. I don't know. In terms of the backlash about RNG, might they build a better or different system? I think that the Netherlight Crucible, which remember has only just, well, it's not even been implemented in the game, but it is only just being put into the game, demonstrates that they are on the completely different page to a lot of players when it comes to RNG. They are totally at odds with, I can't say they're totally at odds with the player base, because, you know, any reasonable person would straight away come back at me, who are you to speak for the whole player base? Fair enough. But in terms of what has been said, I haven't heard any real praise for the RNG aspect of the Netherlight Crucible, which is not proof in itself. But shall we say they're certainly completely at odds with the comments I have seen regarding the Netherlight Crucible. So I don't think they consider that bad RNG, otherwise it wouldn't be coming into the game. It's easy. There's so many ways they could have done the Netherlight Crucible differently, and they have chosen not to. So do I think they'll do something differently? No, because they don't see it as a problem. And unless they happen to see it as a problem between now and the next expansion coming out, the same sort of thing will happen. Okay, so next comment, also from Curious Cat. It says, about the levelling experience and scaling. It says, which will probably be the biggest factor in making levelling great again. I would like it better if they just scale the old content to respective level brackets, vanilla 1 to 60, Outlands 58 to 70, etc. That way new players would still get to see the old content Blizzard provided, but still not be tied to always go in Hellfire, Zanga, blah, blah, blah. And then piss off to Northrend like I did on my last 7 elts that leveled through there. For me, levels are the problem completely. Like, I think content should be scaled for leveling. I've said that. I note the downside, which I talked about last week. For me, the whole concept of levels in an MMO is a problem. Because there's so many of them, it's so off-putting. And it also means it takes you so long to get through them. Because what are Blizzard to do? You know, they can keep... What they used to do in the first few expansions was to keep reducing the amount of experience you needed to get the older levels. But you can only do that so much. My solution would be to get rid of levels altogether, or have so few of them. I mean, with it, the problem is, if you're going to have an MMO out for the long term, levels are obviously going to become a problem. They will in any game that has leveling as its primary means of progression up to end game. The other thing you could do is just have a tiny number of levels. I mean, what about this, for example? So you think to yourself, so what if we didn't have levels at all? Then you might say, so why would we bother questing? Why would you bother doing these quests? And quests are an essential part of an RPG. So they are. You have some other reason to do the quests. Let's say, for example, that doing the main quest lines on the Broken Isles in all those zones. Remember how we had to do enough quests to be able to get honoured with each faction in each of those zones, and then do the same thing in Suramar at level cap to be able to get access to, say, world quests and stuff like that. It's not the case now, but it was then. So, but each of those leveling zones has one major storyline which culminates in a dungeon quest. Now, that's a really good idea. Here's what I would do it. I would have it so that you had to complete all of those major quest lines as an attunement process to get access to the end game. So therefore you wouldn't need levels. Levels wouldn't matter. And if levels don't matter, technically you don't need anything to scale. But you have to complete these storylines in each zone that give you an overall flavour of it, and to get access to what would be called the end game content. That's how I would do it. That's obviously a hugely radical suggestion, and one that is not at all in keeping. Obviously, they don't want to make it too... I don't think they want to make it too alien to players, because players of RPGs will be used to a level system. So I suppose if you had no levels at all, it would be like really weird, and maybe people won't get on with it. So maybe you just, as I say, massively reduce the number of levels. Let's say we just divide them by 10. So, or even, maybe you get away with 5. Maybe you get away with dividing by 5, because some of the expansions were designed to have 5 levels up. So at the moment, level cap 110. So maybe the level, it's now 22. And we got 2 levels out of Legion. Maybe we started at level 20 at the start of Legion, and you did 2 of the major quest lines, and that got you to level 21. Another 2 of the major quest lines got you to level 22. Nothing to do with experience, simply markers for completing those quest lines. That's how I would do it, because I just think it's massively off-putting. And when you've got a game that's in it for many years, it's just unsustainable to have a traditional leveling system. And then it says here, I know you talked about one quest line that would just make you to get to cap by following it, which is sort of part of that idea as well. It says, but my question is, since Blizz won't remake all old content, how would you go about it in the old quest? It's a non-starter. I'm not saying they have to redo all the content, but they have to redo some. They have to make it work. That means creating some new quests and a few scenarios and that sort of stuff. That would have to be done. And obviously, if they're not willing to do that, which I guess they're not because they don't care about leveling, then it's a non-starter. It just couldn't work. So there would have to be some development going on. Anyway, onto the YouTube comments. I'll put on the old magnifier here a bit. Some of them are smaller. So, first one, it says, when people raiders quit their guilds, they usually quit WoW. That's the reason why you don't have a bunch of people looking for guilds. They don't just move on, they quit. It's actually not true, because I keep my eye on guilds that go under. Always you get some that quit. And I've said this before. This was a feature, by the way, even since vanilla. This is a feature of guilds. When guilds go under, some quit. That is the way of it. Because there are just some people who carry on raiding because they enjoy that guild. And if it's going to disband and everyone gets scattered... I mean, it's a different thing if the guild is just going to reform as we did, for example. That's a different thing. Everyone sort of came with us there. But if it's actually going to collapse and people are just going to go their separate ways, go to different realms and stuff like that, these other players don't want to just join a group of strangers, so they will stop. And it could, those sort of players were the sort of players that sort of fell out of the love of the game already. What they enjoyed was the company of those people. So that's why they stayed. But they are always a minority. You can see this because, I mean, I was looking at a guild just this weekend, for example, that's collapsed. I'm constantly on the lookout. When I'm checking WoW progress, especially for comments, because you get the odd comment from someone who will say, oh, the reason for looking for guild is, oh, the guild's just collapsed. That's why I look through all the classes. I don't just look at the ones I'm after. Obviously, I prioritise my time on those. But I look through other ones as well, even if I'm not looking for them. Because someone might have put a comment then. It's like, okay, I don't want you, but I'm going to have a look at your guild, see who's up for it. And you actually find the majority are looking for another guild. The reason it's collapsed is probably either because a leadership stepped back or because they just couldn't, the numbers were unsustainable. That's been a particular problem in Legion. The reason there are not a lot of players about is simply because one of the main reasons for a guild collapsing in Legion, instead of it just being key leaders who have stopped playing, that used to be traditionally the most common, not the only, but the most common reason. Now it is increasingly that they couldn't get the numbers. there's too many guilds for the players. I've talked about this a long time ago. There's too many guilds for the players. Players are getting burnt out by having to do lots of non-raid content, which traditionally they haven't had to do. In any guild, it's obviously you want the majority to do stuff around raiding, but there's always some in a guild that just want to log on for raids and log on. They'll do some bit of farm, whatever, to get consumables, but ultimately they just want to do the raiding and that's it. Those players have got no chance in Legion, so they've stopped. But yeah, when guilds collapse, there's always plenty of people looking for a guild. Not always my guild, unfortunately. Next one. So this is my Who Is That Guy series. Aegwyn isn't a guy, she's a woman. Maybe change the series to Who Is That Person or Who Is That Character. Doesn't have the same ring. Also, I have watched programs and I have observed women calling other women guys. So I'm pretty sure it can be considered, although it's not usual, increasingly a gender neutral term. Also, there's this. That's not my comment though. Next one. Here's an interesting one. It says, video without you talking about a Ret Paladin. Thank you. Feels like it's been a while. In the whole of this month, I have done 2 Ret Paladin videos. And this was quite a recent comment. So I'm not quite sure. In fact, I think the most I've ever done in any one week is 2. Many, I try and do 1 a week. I actually don't. Even this summer, I haven't even done 1 a week. As I say, this whole month, we're now into the entering the 3rd week. And I've done 2 Ret videos this whole month. Now, what this might be is that the way YouTube works, and I don't know why you're necessarily getting notifications of these ones, is when you subscribe to someone, you don't automatically get notified when they upload a video, like you might think you do. You don't if you look at this. Or there is an option you can do that. You can change in your notifications. You can make sure that you are notified of all videos of a particular person you are subscribed to, but you're not automatically notified. What the YouTube system does is when I upload a video, same as when anyone uploads a video, it is sent to the notifications for a small group of that person's subscribers, as well as a small group of non-subscribers. And then YouTube, the algorithm, waits to see what the response is, and they only give it a couple of hours, reputedly. And if it looks like people are watching it within that couple of hours and it looks like they have enjoyed it, in other words, they've watched it, or there's a lot of watch time on it, maybe some interaction with comments, likes, that sort of thing, even dislikes, it comes to that, then they will open it out to a wider audience. And if it's not, if it looks like it's fell flat on its arse, they sort of conclude that not really one of their best, will probably not try and show it to other people. So it could well be that for some reason you are getting notifications when you're getting them at all for my Ret videos, although that would sound really bizarre. But that is the only explanation, because if you actually just click on my videos and scan down, you will not see many Ret videos at all. They're there. Obviously, it's a major part of my channel that I keep people up to date with Retribution Paladin in PvE, but it doesn't require that I do videos on it all the time. There's no need. Only so much changes on a week-to-week basis. In fact, nothing changes on a week-to-week basis. Usually a month-to-month basis. The other thing, next one, sorry. Updated add-ons video will link to an up-to-date version. So this was on a comment on my Tell Me When add-ons video. But again, it's a curious. Sometimes people put comments in, and I'm not quite sure what they're getting at because they don't really explain it. This comment would make sense if it was an out-of-date video. But what I would always say is, if you are looking at a guide, especially a guide, obviously if you're looking at a vlog and it seems out of date, it's just out of date. Vlogs go out of date all the time. But if it's an actual guide and it looks out of date, what I would suggest is that you check the playlist, because I don't keep out-of-date guides in my playlist. Even if those guides were written some time ago, if it's not been removed from the playlist, it's not out of date. And the same goes for this one. This was actually produced during Legion. Nothing has changed for this add-on during Legion. So the video hasn't changed. I don't update them for the sake of it. Yeah, this actual video is up to date. And that's why it's in the playlist. But I would just say, just in general, yeah, if you come across one, you think it's out of date, look in the playlist. If it's still there, it's not out of date. It might not cover everything you want it to cover, then that's a different thing. You could put that in the comments, but it's not out of date. Next comment, RNG base. I think this is not going to be the first one. Sorry, not the last one, I should say. It is. Is it the first? It's not even the first. Honestly, all the RNG just made me completely give up on WoW and switch to Final Fantasy XIV. That game has surprisingly little amount of RNG for an MMO. Everything feels rewarding because you're working towards something. There's currencies for everything, so there's no need for iffy bad luck protection, blah, 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 blah. My view on that is, I think there is a balance with this. That's why I talked about in the RNG video about good and bad RNG. The problem when you reduce RNG, like any MMO developer needs the same thing. They need players to be playing that game. So how do you do that? The way Blizzard do it, increasingly, not exclusively, but increasingly, is with RNG. So you do a raid or a dungeon or something like that. It's RNG what drops. It's RNG what item level drops. So it gets you keep coming back and back and back. And then some people bemoan that system. Another system is, as you indicate, that I don't know exactly what you're talking about with that Final Fantasy because it's never my thing, so I never really got into it. But I'm going to assume that the way that game deals with it is with grind, because that's another way to deal with it. Instead of RNG, as you say there, you're working towards something, but it's slowly. It's a grind. It's a proper amount of grind and farm required. Both of them have their downsides. I suppose it depends on personal preference. I personally don't want everything to be just full on grind. It can sort of look nice. You like filling up a bar to eventually getting something. Like it could be with a legendary. Instead of it being RNG, it could be that doing an emissary cache gives you so much of a bar. Doing a dungeon gives you so much. A mythic plus dungeon, a raid, blah, 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 blah. And then you can see it fill up. And when it fills up, you get your legendary. You know, I can see how some people would prefer that. At the same time, it removes some of that anticipation that maybe today's the day. Oh, it's not, never mind. So there are good things about RNG, I think. It's just that there are very, very bad things as well. And we seem to have a number of those bad things in Legion, but I don't think they're all bad. And the same with grind as well. I think they can get to a point where grind is also negative too. But that's my view. Next comment. How to Netherlight Crucible. Dude with the least amount of poor traits in his weapon has the highest probability to not get a downgrade so he gets the relic. I think you mean the other way around, actually. It would be the one with the most number of rubbish traits in the weapon has the high probability to not get a downgrade. So yeah, if everything else was equal, you'd probably give it to the person with the poorest trait. The least. It's quite funny, isn't it? At the moment, when we're giving a relic out, it's like, who's it best trait for? And in this next one, if the item levels were all sort of equal, it might be, who's this the worst trait for? Who gets nothing from this trait? Because maybe the Netherlight Crucible will give you a nice one. But yes, it is. The Diablo devs need to get taken off WoW. I mean, yeah, but they're not going to be. There was an awful lot of Diablo. They didn't even make a secret of it, did they? With the treasure demon and stuff like that event. But yeah, they didn't even make a secret of that in Legion. And this comment, I think this is the last comment actually. It says, look, Thete, I'm at 1623, blah, blah, blah. This is about a relic. I think a number of people, I think, tried to clarify this, but I just want to be clear on this. It says, this is again to do with the Netherlight Crucible awarding relics. So Luke Council determined that given the traits the relic already had and the +5 item levels was an upgrade, regardless of what secondary stats were present. So what this person is trying to argue is, if you're getting something that's the same relic and +5 item levels, he's saying it's an upgrade regardless because, you know, even if the traits on the Netherlight Crucible are bad, they're better than nothing. But as people have tried to point out, but I just want to be sure that this is clear, the thing is, the relic you currently have slotted also has those traits, the second and third tier traits, and they might be better than what's on the one that's just been given to them. That's the whole point. You know, it's not just that the new relic has these extra traits and therefore is better, because your current ones do too. And if the new traits on this one are worse than your current ones, it could well be that they don't even compensate for the +5 item levels. They might not even come close to compensating for it, depending on exactly what the nature of those traits are. So that is the issue there. That you could get, like, at the moment, you can give someone, like, I'll give you an example. I was fortunate enough to get a Sister's Holy Relic again this week. I've now got 2 of those relics at 940. You know, that's the BIS trait in terms of ones that I can get from Tomb of Sargeras. It's not actual BIS trait out of all of them, but in terms of the ones that drop in Tomb of Sargeras, it is. So I've got 2 at 940. Very nice. I have also coined a 935 though. Now, ordinarily, of course, all I would do is slot that into my tanking or holy weapon. Because there's no further use to me on Retribution, because it's a 5 item level downgrade. However, I'm not going to do that, because when the Netherlight Crucible comes out, it's possible that it could be better than one of my 940s. It's only 5 item levels behind, and depending on what the extra traits and abilities, the Shadow Light abilities I get on it are, it could be, yeah, it could be an upgrade. So I'm keeping it in my bags. And that is the issue with that one. And I think that's it for this week. So remember, there's different places you can put comments on there. Onto the YouTube videos is obviously really good. I do try and read all of those. Obviously, you know, depending on the week, how busy I am and how many comments there are, that isn't always easy, but sometimes it is. There's Curious Cat. We could try that out. Again, if loads of people post onto it, it's going to be a bit unwieldy, but we're giving it a go. And obviously, anyone who posts on Patron gets priority there. I'll also always answer those sort of questions or queries as well. And then potentially Twitter or Discord if it comes to it. Although with Discord, the problem with Discord is sometimes people message me. Sometimes I catch the message like on my phone or something like that, and I'm like, okay, it's not always easy to reply on my phone because it can be quite slow. And then I completely forget about it because there's nothing flagging messages or anything like that on Discord. So Discord can be a good place to get me, and it can be a bad place to get me. But anyway, hope you've enjoyed this. Until next time, I'll see you later.